No one could explain why 50 wild wolves refused to leave her side. The first hunter who saw them swore he would never forget the sight for the rest of his life. Snow fell from a dark gray sky in thick curtains, covering the forest in silence. The wind howled through the pines, carrying icy needles across the frozen landscape. In the center of a small clearing, surrounded by a perfect circle of wolves, lay a young woman who should not have survived the night. Her white hair blended almost seamlessly into the snow beneath her. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Her pale skin looked like carved marble beneath the moonlight. Yet somehow, she was still breathing. Barely. The wolves stood shoulder to shoulder around her. Some were silver. Some were black. Others carried coats as white as winter itself. None of them moved. None of them showed fear. Their eyes remained fixed on the girl, as if guarding something precious. Something important. The hunter tightened his grip on his lantern. His horse refused to take another step. Even the animals sensed something unusual. Wild wolves never behaved this way, especially not 50 of them. Then one of the wolves slowly lifted its head toward the sky and released a long, mournful howl. Another joined. Then another. Soon the entire clearing echoed with haunting voices that seemed to roll across the mountains for miles. The hunter felt chills race down his spine. It sounded less like a warning and more like a call, as if the forest itself was announcing her presence. Far away, nearly 40 miles north, lights still glowed inside the great hall of Silver Pine Pack. Warm fires crackled inside stone hearths. Laughter filled the room. Music drifted through the rafters. The annual Winter Moon Festival had drawn wolves from every corner of the territory. Yet while hundreds celebrated inside the hall, one young woman sat completely alone outside. Evelyn Frost pulled her worn gray cloak tighter around her shoulders and stared at the falling snow. She could hear the laughter through the walls. Every burst of joy felt like a reminder that she did not belong. At 21 years old, Evelyn had spent her entire life standing outside circles she was never invited into. Most wolves carried golden skin touched by summer sunlight, or healthy complexions bright with life. Evelyn was different. Her skin was ivory white. Her hair looked like fresh snow. Her eyes were so pale they often appeared silver beneath certain light. People whispered whenever she passed. Some called her strange. Others called her cursed. The cruelest called her the White Curse. Evelyn lowered her gaze. She had learned long ago that arguing never changed anyone's mind. You should leave before they notice you, a quiet voice said beside her. Evelyn looked up. An elderly woman stood near the doorway holding a basket of firewood. Martha Green was one of the few people who had ever shown her kindness. I wasn't doing anything, Evelyn said softly. Martha offered a sad smile. Sometimes that doesn't matter. The words hurt because they were true. Through the open doorway, Evelyn caught a glimpse of young wolves dancing beneath lantern light. Their smiles looked effortless. Their lives looked simple. For a brief moment, she wondered what it felt like to belong somewhere. What it felt like to walk into a room without hearing whispers behind her back. Then a loud voice suddenly cut through the music. There she is. The laughter inside seemed to fade. Several heads turned toward the entrance. Evelyn's stomach tightened instantly. She recognized that voice. Pack Beta Marcus Holloway stepped forward, his expression hard and cold. Behind him stood several others. None of them looked happy to see her. Snow drifted between them as silence settled over the courtyard. Evelyn felt the familiar weight of dozens of eyes staring at her. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And deep inside her chest, a quiet instinct whispered that before this night ended, everything was about to change. The cold seemed to deepen the moment Marcus Holloway stepped into the courtyard. Snowflakes drifted between him and Evelyn, catching the lantern light before disappearing into the darkness. Nobody spoke at first. The music inside the hall had stopped completely. One by one, curious faces appeared in the doorway. Evelyn recognized nearly all of them. People she had grown up beside. People whose names she knew by heart. Yet not one of them offered a smile. Not one of them looked happy to see her. Marcus folded his arms across his chest. His expensive coat looked untouched by the weather. You were told not to attend the festival, he said. Evelyn swallowed hard. I never went inside. That was not the point. A few quiet murmurs rippled through the crowd. Evelyn could feel dozens of eyes studying her pale hair, her pale skin, her pale eyes. The same eyes that always made her feel like she was standing under a spotlight she never asked for. I only wanted to watch, she said quietly. From outside, Marcus let out a slow breath. You should know by now that your presence makes people uncomfortable. The words landed exactly where he intended them to. Evelyn lowered her gaze to the snow-covered ground. She wished she could say she was surprised. She wished the familiar ache inside her chest hurt less than it did. Neither was true. A sudden voice rose from the crowd. The snowstorm started right after she arrived. Another voice followed. It always happens. Bad luck follows her. Someone else whispered something she could not quite hear. A few nervous laughs followed. Martha Green stepped forward immediately. Enough, the elderly woman said sharply. She has done nothing wrong. Marcus glanced toward Martha. His expression softened for half a second out of respect before becoming cold again. Nobody is accusing her of wrongdoing. Evelyn almost laughed at that. Nobody had to accuse her anymore. The judgment had become automatic. It lived inside every sideways glance, every whisper, every invitation she never received. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors of the hall swung open. The crowd parted instantly. Pack leader Gregory Frost emerged into the courtyard. Evelyn felt her stomach drop. Her father rarely appeared during public gatherings. At 52 years old, Gregory carried the kind of authority that silenced conversations the moment he entered a room. Snow settled on his dark coat as he walked forward. His expression revealed nothing. That was somehow worse. Evelyn searched his face for warmth, for concern, for anything that resembled family. She found none. Father, she whispered. Gregory stopped several feet away. Evelyn. Hearing her name spoken so formally sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the weather. Around them, the crowd fell completely silent. Even the wind seemed quieter. The council has reached a decision, Gregory said. Evelyn stared at him. What decision? Nobody answered immediately. Marcus looked away. Martha suddenly appeared frightened. Something twisted inside Evelyn's chest. What decision? She repeated. Gregory exhaled slowly. The elders believe your continued presence has become a source of division within the pack. The words made no sense at first. Division. Presence. The phrases sounded distant, unreal. Then understanding began creeping in. Cold and unwelcome. No, she whispered. Gregory's jaw tightened. The council voted unanimously. Evelyn felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. You voted too? For the first time, her father hesitated. That tiny pause hurt more than any answer could have. Snow continued falling around them. Thick, silent, endless. You cannot do this, Martha said suddenly. She belongs here. Gregory closed his eyes briefly. The decision is final. Evelyn's hands trembled inside her cloak. She wanted to speak, wanted to argue, wanted to ask why being different was always treated like a crime. Yet the faces surrounding her told her everything she needed to know. Most looked relieved. Some looked uncomfortable. None looked surprised. Deep down, they had all expected this day eventually. Even her. When Evelyn asked, her voice sounded strangely calm. Gregory looked toward the dark forest beyond the village. Tonight, the single word seemed to freeze the air itself. Somewhere beyond the distant tree line, a lone wolf released a long, haunting howl. Then another answered. Then another. The sounds echoed across the mountains beneath the falling snow. Nobody noticed how Evelyn suddenly looked toward the forest. Nobody noticed the strange feeling that stirred deep inside her heart. As though something out there had heard the decision. As though something ancient had just awakened. For several seconds, nobody moved. The words hung in the frozen air like a final sentence that could never be taken back. Evelyn stood perfectly still while snow gathered on her shoulders. She kept waiting for someone to speak up. Someone to object. Someone to say there had been a mistake. Nobody did. Faces that had once been familiar suddenly felt distant. Like strangers she had never truly known. Martha Green looked devastated. Her hands tightened around the basket she still carried. Gregory, please, she said softly. Think about what you are doing. The pack leader's expression remained unchanged. I have thought about it. Evelyn stared at her father. 100 memories flashed through her mind. Walking beside him through summer fields when she was a little girl. Sitting beside the fireplace during winter storms. Listening to stories about loyalty, courage, and family. She wondered if those moments had meant as much to him as they had to her. Right now, it did not feel that way. How long do I have? She asked. Gregory looked toward the dark forest again. 1 hour. The answer struck harder than she expected. 1 hour. 21 years inside Silver Pine Pack reduced to 60 minutes. Evelyn lowered her eyes before anyone could see the tears gathering there. She refused to let them watch her break apart. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Several villagers looked away. Others seemed relieved the confrontation was ending. The silence felt unbearable. Then Gregory turned and walked back toward the hall. The council followed him. One by one, people disappeared inside the warmth and light. The music slowly returned. Laughter followed soon after. It was as if nothing important had happened. As if a life had not just been pushed beyond the borders of everything familiar. Evelyn remained standing alone in the snow. Martha approached carefully. "Come with me," she whispered. "You should not be by yourself tonight." Evelyn managed a weak smile. "Thank you." Martha led her toward a small cottage near the edge of the village. The walk felt unreal. Lanterns glowed warmly through frosted windows. Families gathered around dinner tables. Children played near the festival square. Life continued exactly as it always had. Only Evelyn's world had changed. Inside the cottage, warmth wrapped around her immediately. A fire crackled softly in the stone hearth. Martha handed her a steaming mug of tea. "Drink." Evelyn wrapped both hands around the cup. The heat felt wonderful. For a moment, she simply sat there listening to the fire. Neither woman spoke. Some silences carried too much weight for words. Eventually Martha sat across from her. "I have lived here for 60 years, she said quietly. "I have seen good leaders and bad leaders. I have seen wise decisions and foolish ones. This," her voice faltered. "This is a mistake." Evelyn stared into the tea. "Maybe they are right." Martha immediately shook her head. "Do not say that. People have always feared me. People fear what they do not understand." Evelyn looked toward the fire. The flames danced behind the glass screen. "What if I really do bring bad luck?" The older woman laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because the idea itself sounded ridiculous. "You have spent your entire life helping others." Martha leaned forward. "You help injured animals. You volunteer during harvest season. You care for elders. Tell me, child, does that sound like bad luck?" Evelyn felt her throat tighten. She had forgotten what it felt like to have someone defend her. Martha reached into a wooden chest near the fireplace and removed a thick wool blanket. Then another. She placed both beside Evelyn. "Take these." "I cannot." "You can." Martha smiled sadly. "You are going to need them." The reality of what was coming settled heavily between them. The forest beyond Silver Pine stretched for hundreds of miles. Winter temperatures were expected to fall below zero before sunrise. Even experienced hunters avoided traveling alone during storms like this. A small clock ticked quietly on the wall. Time continued moving forward. Relentless. Unstoppable. Eventually Evelyn stood. The hour was nearly gone. Martha walked her to the door. Snow still poured from the sky. The storm looked even worse now. Wind twisted through the village streets. Visibility had dropped to less than 50 feet. Evelyn pulled the blankets around her shoulders and stepped onto the porch. Before she could leave, Martha grabbed her hand. "Listen to me carefully." Evelyn turned back. The old woman's eyes were strangely serious, almost fearful. "If the forest calls to you tonight, do not ignore it." Evelyn blinked. "What does that mean?" Martha hesitated. Then she slowly released her hand. "I do not know." Another distant howl echoed through the storm. Closer this time. Much closer. Evelyn looked toward the dark tree line beyond the village. Something deep inside her stirred again. The same strange feeling she had experienced earlier. A feeling she could not explain. As though unseen eyes were already watching her from somewhere beyond the snow. The village gates stood open when Evelyn finally reached them. Snow swirled through the entrance like pale ghosts dancing in the wind. She stopped for a moment and looked back over her shoulder. Silver Pine Pack glowed beneath hundreds of lanterns. Warm light spilled from windows. Laughter still drifted faintly through the storm. Life continued behind those walls exactly as it always had. Tomorrow morning, people would wake up, eat breakfast, and go about their routines. Most of them would not think about her at all. The realization hurt more than she expected. For years, she had wondered what she could do to make people accept her. Tonight, she finally understood something painful. There had never been anything she could do. Some minds had been made up long before she was old enough to defend herself. A powerful gust of wind swept through the gate, pulling at her cloak. Evelyn turned away before her courage failed. Then she stepped beyond the borders of the only home she had ever known. The forest welcomed her with silence. Towering pines stretched into darkness on every side. Their branches groaned beneath the weight of fresh snow. The storm swallowed the sounds of the village within minutes. Soon there was nothing left except the crunch of her boots and the endless whistle of winter wind. She walked slowly at first. The blankets Martha had given her provided some protection, but the cold still slipped through every layer. Tiny needles of ice stung her cheeks. Her fingers ached despite being hidden beneath thick gloves. After half an hour, the village lights disappeared completely behind the trees. Evelyn stopped and looked around. Darkness surrounded her. For the first time that night, fear began creeping into her thoughts. She had spent time in these woods before. During spring, during summer, never during a blizzard like this. Visibility had dropped to less than 30 feet. Every direction looked identical. Snow-covered trees, frozen shadows, endless white. A distant howl drifted through the storm. Evelyn froze. The sound was not threatening. If anything, it felt strangely familiar. Another howl answered from somewhere farther away. Then another. She listened carefully. The call seemed to move through the forest in a pattern she could not understand. Almost like voices passing a message from one ridge to another. A shiver ran through her body. She remembered Martha's final words. If the forest calls to you tonight, do not ignore it. What had she meant? Evelyn continued walking. Time lost meaning beneath the storm. Minutes blended into hours. The temperature kept falling. Her legs grew heavier with every step. Exhaustion settled into her muscles. More than once she considered finding shelter beneath a large pine until morning. Yet something kept pulling her forward. A feeling, a whisper, a quiet instinct she could not explain. Then she heard it. A small sound, barely audible above the wind. Evelyn stopped immediately. The sound came again. Weak, frightened. She turned slowly toward a frozen creek buried beneath snow. At first she saw nothing. Then movement caught her eye. Her heart tightened. A small white wolf pup was trapped near the edge of the creek. One of its hind legs had slipped between broken layers of ice. The frightened animal struggled weakly, unable to free itself. Snow gathered across its fur. Evelyn hurried toward it. "Hey," she whispered. "Easy." The pup tried to pull away at first. Fear filled its pale eyes. Evelyn crouched carefully several feet away. "I am not going to hurt you." Her voice remained soft despite the cold rattling through her body. The little wolf whined quietly. It could not have been more than a few months old. Completely alone. Completely vulnerable. Something about the sight made Evelyn's chest ache. She knew exactly what it felt like to be abandoned. Slowly she crawled closer. The pup watched her nervously. Snowflakes landed on its nose. Finally it stopped struggling. As if it sensed her intentions, Evelyn carefully brushed away the snow around the trapped leg. The ice had frozen awkwardly around it. Nothing appeared broken. Relief washed through her. She worked carefully, ignoring the numbness spreading through her fingers. The freezing water soaked through her gloves almost immediately. Minutes passed. The wind howled louder. Her hands burned with cold. Finally the ice cracked apart. The pup pulled its leg free and stumbled backward. Evelyn exhaled with relief. "There you go." The little wolf stared at her. Neither moved. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of running away, the pup took a hesitant step forward. Its nose gently touched her hand. Warm breath brushed against her frozen skin. For a brief moment, the forest seemed strangely quiet. Evelyn smiled despite everything. She had no idea that far beyond the snowy trees, hidden among the darkness, several pairs of glowing eyes had been watching the entire scene. The little wolf remained beside her for several seconds, its pale eyes never leaving her face. Snow continued falling around them, soft and endless. Evelyn slowly pulled her freezing hand back beneath her blanket. The brief warmth from the pup's breath disappeared almost instantly. "You should go," she whispered. "Your family is probably looking for you." The pup tilted its head as if trying to understand her. Then its ears suddenly lifted. It was listening to something far away. A moment later it turned toward the dark forest. Evelyn followed its gaze. At first she saw nothing. Then movement appeared between the trees. Her heart skipped. A massive white wolf emerged from the shadows. Moonlight reflected across its silver-white fur. The animal moved with calm confidence, each step deliberate and silent despite the deep snow. Evelyn remained perfectly still. The wolf stopped about 20 feet away. Its golden eyes settled on her. There was no fear in them, no aggression, only quiet observation. The pup immediately trotted toward the larger wolf. Relief washed across Evelyn. "That must be your mother," she said softly. The great wolf lowered its head and gently nudged the smaller one. For a brief moment, Evelyn smiled. Seeing them together stirred something warm inside her chest, something she had not felt all evening. Then another wolf stepped from the darkness. This one was black as midnight. A third appeared moments later. Then a fourth. Evelyn's smile faded. Her pulse quickened. Wolves emerged from every direction. Gray wolves, white wolves, black wolves, large ones, smaller ones. Within minutes, more than a dozen stood among the snow-covered trees. None approached aggressively. None growled. Yet their sudden appearance was impossible to ignore. Evelyn slowly stood. Her exhausted legs trembled beneath her. The wolves watched silently. Their eyes reflected silver beneath the moonlight. She should have felt terrified. Instead, she felt something far stranger. Familiarity. As though she had somehow stepped into a place where she belonged. The thought made no sense. She pushed it away immediately. The storm intensified. Wind swept across the clearing with renewed force. Snow struck her face. Visibility dropped even further. Evelyn tightened the blankets around herself. Her body was beginning to lose its fight against the cold. Every breath felt heavier than the last. The wolves seemed to notice. The large white wolf stepped forward first. Then another followed. Soon several wolves moved closer. Not enough to surround her. Just enough to shorten the distance. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened again. "What are you doing?" she whispered. No answer came. Only the sound of wind through the trees. Her knees suddenly weakened. Exhaustion crashed over her without warning. She stumbled backward. The world tilted slightly. The white wolf immediately moved closer. Not threatening. Protective. Evelyn stared at the animal in confusion. "Why?" she asked. The question vanished into the storm. A sharp gust of wind swept through the clearing. Snow blinded her for several seconds. When she opened her eyes again, more wolves had arrived. 20, maybe 30. She could no longer count them accurately. Their forms blended with the snow and darkness. Every direction contained glowing eyes. Yet none crossed an invisible boundary around her. It was as if they were waiting, watching, listening to instructions she could not hear. The strange feeling inside her chest returned. Stronger this time. It felt almost like recognition. The sensation made her dizzy. Evelyn tried taking another step. Her legs refused. The freezing temperatures had drained the last of her strength. She sank slowly into the snow. Her blankets slipped from one shoulder. Cold air immediately wrapped around her. The white wolf reacted first. It moved beside her and lay down several feet away. Then another wolf did the same. Then another. Evelyn watched through half-frozen eyes as something incredible began happening. One by one, wolves settled into the snow around her. A loose circle formed. Then a second layer. Then a third. More animals arrived from the darkness. The pattern continued expanding outward. The wolves were not trapping her. They were positioning themselves against the wind, blocking the strongest gusts before they could reach her. Evelyn blinked slowly. Her exhausted mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. "That is impossible," she whispered. Yet the wolves continued arranging themselves with quiet purpose. Snow gathered across their fur. Not one abandoned its position. Not one looked away. The circle grew larger, stronger, complete. Somewhere beyond the clearing, another distant howl echoed through the mountains. This time dozens of voices answered. And hidden far away on a northern ridge, a lone rider suddenly pulled his horse to a stop. Alpha King Damian Blackwood lifted his head toward the storm. Something deep within his wolf had just awakened. Damian Blackwood pulled his horse to a halt atop the frozen ridge. Snow whipped across his dark coat. The powerful stallion beneath him shifted nervously, sensing the same thing that had stopped its rider. Silence. Not ordinary silence. Something deeper, older. Damian slowly lifted his gaze toward the southern forest. Beneath the roar of the storm, his wolf could hear distant howls echoing across miles of wilderness. The sound carried purpose, meaning, a message. Beside him, Captain Rowan Mercer frowned. "Your Majesty?" Damian did not answer immediately. His silver eyes remained fixed on the darkness. For years he had ruled the Northern Territories. He knew wolf behavior better than any living alpha. Packs fought, hunted, migrated, protected territory. What they did not do was gather in large numbers during a blizzard. especially not in complete coordination. Another howl drifted through the night. Then another. Damien felt a strange pull deep inside his chest. It lasted only a second, yet it left behind an unsettling feeling. Recognition. Something is wrong, he said quietly. Rowan glanced toward the forest. Do you want scouts sent ahead? Damien nodded once. Two riders immediately turned their horses and disappeared into the storm. Far below, hidden within the endless sea of pines, Evelyn struggled to keep her eyes open. Snow continued falling around the massive circle of wolves. The wind still screamed through the forest, yet its sharpest edges no longer reached her. The wolves had become a living wall against the storm. Warmth drifted toward her from every direction. Not enough to make her comfortable. Enough to keep her alive. Evelyn could barely understand what was happening. Her thoughts felt distant. Slow. The cold had drained nearly all her strength. Even so, she remained aware of the wolves surrounding her. Every time she looked up, another pair of glowing eyes seemed to be watching over her. The white wolf remained closest. Its golden eyes never left her face. Hours passed. The storm deepened. Yet not one wolf abandoned its place. Some shifted positions to block stronger gusts. Others moved closer whenever the temperature dropped further. The coordination felt impossible. No human had commanded them. No alpha had issued orders. They simply knew. Somewhere after midnight, Evelyn heard movement beyond the outer ring. Several wolves lifted their heads at once. Their ears turned toward the trees. A moment later, a figure emerged from the darkness. Another wolf, larger than most, older. Its fur carried shades of silver and white. The moment it entered the clearing, dozens of wolves lowered their heads respectfully. Evelyn watched through tired eyes. The newcomer approached the circle's edge and stopped. For several long seconds it simply stared at her. A strange feeling washed over Evelyn. She could not explain it. Sadness, recognition, comfort, emotions she should not have been able to read from an animal. The silver wolf slowly sat down facing her. Snow gathered across its back. The forest became completely silent. Then, very gently, it lowered its head. Evelyn's breath caught. It felt less like a gesture from an animal and more like a greeting. The moment lasted only seconds. Yet every wolf in the clearing seemed to acknowledge it. Far away, the two royal scouts finally reached the edge of the clearing. Both men froze instantly. Neither spoke. Neither moved. They simply stared. One scout slowly removed the snow from his lantern and counted again. Then again. His hands trembled. That cannot be right, he whispered. The second scout swallowed hard. I count 50. They looked toward the center of the formation. Toward the young woman sleeping beneath blankets and falling snow. Toward the wolves protecting her with unwavering devotion. One scout immediately turned his horse around. The king needs to see this. As the rider disappeared into the storm, the silver wolf near Evelyn suddenly lifted its head toward the northern horizon. Its eyes reflected moonlight through the clouds, almost as if it already knew someone important was coming. By sunrise, the storm had begun to weaken. Snow still drifted through the forest, but the violent winds that had ruled the night were finally losing strength. Pale morning light filtered through the clouds, casting a silver glow across the clearing. Evelyn opened her eyes slowly. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Everywhere she looked, wolves surrounded her. Dozens of them. Their fur carried a layer of fresh snow. Some were asleep. Others remained alert, watching the forest with quiet focus. The circle had never broken. Not once. Warmth lingered beneath the blankets. Not much. Just enough. Enough to keep her alive through a night that should have taken everything from her. Evelyn pushed herself upright. Every muscle protested. Her hands trembled from exhaustion. The white wolf closest to her immediately stood and stepped forward. Golden eyes met hers. Calm. Steady. Familiar. You stayed, she whispered. The wolf blinked slowly. Around the clearing, several others lifted their heads. It felt as though they had been waiting for her to wake. Miles away, a column of riders moved swiftly through the snow-covered forest. Damien Blackwood rode at the front. His dark horse cut through the drifts without hesitation. Behind him followed Captain Rowan Mercer and 6 members of the Royal Guard. None of them spoke. The scout's report had stunned everyone. 50 wolves protecting a single human through the worst storm of the winter. Such behavior defied every known instinct. Damien's expression remained unreadable. Yet inside, questions continued building. The strange feeling from the night before had never disappeared. If anything, it had grown stronger. Nearly an hour later, the lead scout raised a hand. Up ahead, the riders slowed immediately. Through the trees, shapes became visible. Wolves. Dozens of them. Even from a distance, the formation was unmistakable. Rowan stared in disbelief. By the moon goddess. No one finished the thought. They simply looked. At the center of the clearing sat a young woman wrapped in blankets. White hair spilled across her shoulders. Her pale skin seemed almost luminous beneath the morning light. The wolves remained around her like loyal guardians. Then something remarkable happened. The moment Damien guided his horse into the clearing, every wolf became still. Complete silence settled over the forest. Evelyn looked up. Her breath caught. The rider approaching her looked unlike anyone she had ever seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark winter clothing trimmed with silver. His presence seemed to alter the very air around him. Power surrounded him without effort. The wolves watched him carefully, yet none showed fear. Damien slowly dismounted. His silver eyes moved across the clearing. 50 wolves. Exactly as reported. Then his gaze settled on Evelyn. Something inside him tightened unexpectedly. Not recognition. Not yet. Something deeper. A feeling he could not name. Before he could speak, the great silver wolf that had arrived during the night stepped forward. Rowan immediately tensed. Several guards exchanged nervous looks. The animal moved directly between Damien and Evelyn. Then it turned toward the Alpha King. Seconds passed. No one moved. No one breathed. Slowly, deliberately, the silver wolf lowered its head. One by one, every wolf in the clearing followed. 50 wolves bowing in complete silence. Rowan stared in disbelief. The guards looked equally stunned. Evelyn could barely process what she was seeing. Yet Damien's attention remained fixed on the silver wolf. Because he understood exactly how impossible this was. Wolves did not offer respect lightly. Certainly not wild wolves. And never in such numbers. The Alpha King looked beyond them toward Evelyn. Snowflakes drifted between them. The strange feeling inside his chest suddenly intensified. The forest had protected her. 50 wolves had guarded her through the night. And now every instinct he possessed was telling him the same thing. This girl was far more important than anyone realized. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Snow drifted gently through the clearing, while 50 wolves remained bowed around the young woman they had protected through the night. Damien Blackwood had witnessed many extraordinary things during his years as Alpha King. He had seen rare wolves, ancient traditions, unexplained phenomena hidden deep within the Northern Territories. Yet nothing compared to this. Slowly, he stepped forward. The wolves did not stop him. They simply watched. Evelyn tightened the blanket around her shoulders as he approached. Up close, the Alpha King seemed even more imposing. His silver eyes carried a quiet intensity that made it difficult to look away. Yet there was no cruelty in them. No judgment. Only curiosity. "What is your name?" he asked. His voice was calm and surprisingly warm. Evelyn swallowed. Evelyn Frost. Something flickered across Damien's expression. The surname was familiar. Silver Pine Pack was one of the oldest territories under his rule. Frost, he repeated quietly. Gregory Frost's daughter? Evelyn lowered her eyes. Yes. Captain Rowan exchanged a glance with one of the guards. Everyone in the north knew Gregory Frost. He was respected, trusted, loyal. The idea that his daughter had spent the night alone in a blizzard made little sense. Damien seemed to reach the same conclusion. Why were you here? The question lingered between them. Evelyn hesitated. Part of her wanted to avoid the truth. Another part was simply too exhausted to hide it. I was exiled. Silence followed. Even the guards looked surprised. Damien's gaze sharpened slightly. Exiled. Evelyn nodded. The council voted. She tried to sound detached. Tried to make the words feel less painful than they were. It did not work. Damien studied her carefully. Then his attention shifted toward the silver wolf standing nearby. The animal had not moved. Its golden eyes remained fixed on Evelyn. Something about that bothered him. Not because it seemed threatening. Because it seemed familiar. Very familiar. Suddenly, the silver wolf stepped forward. Several guards instinctively straightened. The animal ignored them completely. Instead, it approached Evelyn. Slowly, almost reverently, it lowered its head beside her shoulder. A soft glow appeared beneath the fur along its neck. Rowan blinked. Your Majesty. Damien saw it too. A symbol. hidden beneath the wolf's fur, silver lines forming an ancient crest. His pulse quickened instantly. Impossible. He had only seen that mark once before, in a book locked inside the royal archives. A crest older than any modern pack. A symbol connected to stories most wolves considered legends. The Moonborn line. The silver wolf lifted its head and looked directly at Damien. Understanding crashed into him. The wolves were not protecting Evelyn because she had survived the storm. They were not protecting her because she had helped the pup. Those things mattered, but they were not the reason. The reason was her. Damien slowly turned toward Evelyn. Pale hair, silver eyes, snow-white appearance. Traits dismissed by others as strange. Traits ancient records had described centuries ago. A memory surfaced from his childhood. An old historian speaking before a fire. The Moonborn descendants will be recognized not by crowns or titles, but by the forest itself. The words echoed through his mind. Suddenly everything made sense. The wolves had recognized her long before humans had. They had answered a call she did not even know she carried. Evelyn noticed the change in Damien's expression. "What is it?" she asked softly. The Alpha King looked at her for several seconds before answering. "I think," he said quietly, "that your pack made a very serious mistake." Confusion filled her face. Damien glanced around the clearing. 50 wolves remained watching, waiting, protecting. Then his gaze returned to Evelyn. "You believe they saved you because you rescued one small wolf." He shook his head slowly. "No, Evelyn. That is not what happened." The morning wind stirred the snow around them. The silver wolf stepped closer to her side. Damien's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "The forest knows who you are." Evelyn stared at him, unable to understand. But deep beneath the confusion, something ancient seemed to awaken inside her heart. Something that had been waiting her entire life to be seen. The clearing remained silent after Damien's words. Evelyn looked from the Alpha King to the silver wolf beside her, struggling to understand what any of it meant. Her entire life, people had looked at her and seen something wrong. Something strange. Something unfortunate. Now this man, the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, was telling her the exact opposite. "The forest knows who you are." The sentence echoed through her mind. Before she could respond, the silver wolf slowly rose to its feet. Every other wolf in the clearing immediately became alert. Their ears lifted. Their attention shifted toward the eastern ridge. Damien noticed it at once. So did Rowan. Something was coming. A few minutes later, riders appeared through the trees. Silver Pine pack hunters. Gregory Frost rode at the front. His face turned pale the moment he entered the clearing. The council members behind him looked equally stunned. None of them had expected this. They had followed reports of unusual wolf activity, assuming it was a rumor. Instead, they found the Alpha King standing beside the daughter they had cast out only hours earlier. More shocking still, dozens of wolves remained gathered around her. Gregory slowly dismounted. His eyes moved between Damien and Evelyn. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. Damien did not look pleased to see him. "Pack Leader Frost." Gregory swallowed. "We received reports and came immediately." The Alpha King studied him for several seconds. Interesting. The single word carried enough weight to make several council members uncomfortable. Gregory looked toward Evelyn. For the first time since the previous night, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Evelyn. She waited. Part of her wanted an apology. Another part no longer cared. The silence stretched between them. Then the silver wolf suddenly stepped forward and stopped beside her. Gregory froze. Every hunter froze. The animal lowered its head next to Evelyn's shoulder as if publicly claiming her protection. A murmur spread through the group. No one had ever seen behavior like this. Damien finally spoke. "Do you know what happened here last night?" Gregory slowly shook his head. "No, Your Majesty." Damien gestured toward the wolves. They crossed territory lines. They ignored the storm. They guarded one person through an entire winter night. Gregory stared at the scene. Damien's voice became even quieter. Not because she demanded it. Not because she controlled them. Because they chose to. The words landed harder than any accusation. Evelyn watched her father lower his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to understand the magnitude of what had happened. The Alpha King turned toward the gathered wolves. Morning sunlight finally broke through the clouds. Golden light spilled across the clearing. It touched Evelyn's pale hair, reflected inside her silver eyes. At that exact moment, something extraordinary happened. A faint silver glow appeared beneath the snow at her feet. Delicate lines spread outward like moonlit roots beneath the forest floor. Gasps echoed from every direction. The light lasted only a few seconds before fading away. Yet everyone had seen it. Everyone. Damien smiled slightly. Not with surprise. With confirmation. He already knew. The forest had simply chosen to show the others. Evelyn looked down at the place where the glow had appeared. Her heart pounded. "What was that?" she whispered. Damien stepped closer. His expression carried a rare warmth now. "Proof." She blinked. "Proof of what?" The Alpha King glanced toward the wolves. 50 guardians who had refused to abandon her. Then he looked back at the young woman everyone else had rejected. "Proof that your worth was never determined by those who failed to see it." The wind moved gently through the trees. Around them, wolves began rising one by one. Their task was complete. The storm had passed. The girl they protected was no longer alone. As the first wolves disappeared into the forest, Evelyn felt something she had not felt in years. Not fear. Not loneliness. Belonging. And somewhere deep within the ancient woods, the forest seemed to breathe a quiet sigh of satisfaction, as though it had finally returned something precious to the place where it belonged.